All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here for our SR16 corridor study. This is the third tag meeting, I believe. We had the first one back in the spring, and then another one about a month ago at this point. And so this meeting will be focusing, the previous two meetings, I think we really heavily focused on the active transportation plan, which Paul Moser's been leading. In this meeting, we'll focus on our SR16 corridor study. We'll talk about kind of what our goal of this study is going to be, since we haven't really focused on this portion of the project yet. And then we'll get into a few kind of visioning exercises as we proceed. But every DelDOT presentation starts off with our mission statement, which is to provide excellence in transportation for every trip, every mode, every dollar, and every one. We also always show the updated traffic fatalities year to date. You'll see at this point, we are at 113 fatalities statewide for the year, which is about a 7% decline from where we were at this point last year. So any improvement is great, but a lot of the person types, the pedestrian fatalities, the pedestrian fatalities are up, bicyclist fatalities are flat from where they were at this time last year. And then the motorcyclist and other person type are also up. Other person type, kind of a weird one, but incidents of scooters. We have had a few accidents where there have been fatalities where vehicles have crashed into homes, and there have been deaths as a result of that. So those are not fatalities that we can classify in one of the other types. So just a reminder to continue to be cautious and be safe on the roads, all the things we know we're supposed to be doing, but sometimes we take for granted. And then we will go from there, and I'll bring up Andrew to kind of walk us through some of our agenda.
Do I need to be up there, Leah?
You don't have to be.
All right, I'm gonna stay here then. Someone else. Does that mean you have to?
I can advance, yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't wanna make you up there. Well, actually, you're gonna be coming up in a second anyway. So. Hi, everyone, Andrew Bing. I help DelDOT and a lot of these efforts in terms of just facilitating meetings, kind of keeping it going, staying on track and so forth. So that'll be kind of my role here if I kind of interrupt someone or try to keep things moving. Just that's why I'm here, to try to make sure we get out at a reasonable time here. So you see the agenda up here in terms of what we're going to do. The first two areas, the welcome and the study area, background and scope. I will be having us go around and kind of introduce each of us. But again, I am Andrew Bing, and we'll be taking on that role. So we're going to focus on the study area, but then spend time with existing conditions and key issues. Probably the bulk of our time will be spent in this visioning session, where we really do want to get, try to get as much out of you as we can in terms of, what you see happening now. How do you currently get around destinations on 16? We're kind of making that transition from, the active transportation plan to really starting to focus on 16 and how you all interact with 16. And, what do you want to see in the future for 16? Not so much a discussion on, all the problems right now, although problems are good because that helps us sort of identify what's maybe we don't like. And then, but we really want to be talking about what do we want to see in 5, 10, 15 years? What would that vision be for you? So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about our general stakeholder and public involvement, have some discussion, next steps, and have some public comment at the end if we have anyone from the public who wants to provide a comment. In terms of the team that you see here, you've already heard from Austin. We've got Paul Moser, also from DelDOT, over there, filling out his required notice that the library asked him to fill out. Leah Casanda is back there, who is our project manager with WRA. I mentioned my name. I'm not in the room, but also online, Kristen Hoffeld, Julie Shipper, and then obviously we have you all here, and we have other people who are joining us by Zoom. So this is a virtual meeting, so we do want all of you who are on by Zoom to also participate in this process of sharing information. So we will come to you, what we need you to do is just let us know that you want to say something by raising your hand, and then we'll eventually, we'll get to you. But in terms of our tag members, you can kind of see who we have up there. We have DelDOT listed. I've already mentioned a couple of people, but we have other people from DelDOT involved in this. But you see the town of Milton, the county, Dorothy's here from the Office of State Planning Coordination. We have residents, parents, the chamber, Delaware Greenways, and then we talked about consultant support. But why don't we just go around and just do introductions, maybe a name, and if you have some role, let us know that. And just to talk loudly so that people online can hear.
I'm Devin Brittingham. I'm a parent of local children, middle school, elementary school children.
Thanks.
Randy Meredith, I'm on the town council, I'm the chair of streets and sidewalks, and I chaired our traffic calming advisory group.
Great, thanks.
Tom Quas, project coordinator for the town of Milton.
Dick Trask, I'm the chairperson for planning and zoning for Milton.
John Collier, Mayor, Town of Milton.
I'm Mary Quigley, I'm on the street and sidewalk committee of Milton.
Greg Hicks, just a town citizen.
No need to put just in there.
Dorothy Morris, Office of State Planning Coordination.
I'm Matt DK Kazan. Harvey, Chief of Police.
Leah Santa, good to see you all again.
Paul Moser, engineer, Delaware Active Transportation and Community Connection section.
You already heard from Austin, but maybe, Austin, I don't know what the most efficient way, how many people do we have online right now? Well, maybe we could just, read off the different names. It might be clunky trying to get everyone to come on individually, so.
Sure, we have online, we have Julie Shipper with FHI, as we mentioned, Dara, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name.
You did it right. Dara Schumeyer. I'm on streets and sidewalks for the town of Milton, and I'm also a resident on the Milton Transportation Study.
Great, thank you. James Fisher,
Yep, I'm here. I'm a Milton resident. I'm a Milton driver, bicyclist, and pedestrian. I have a 10-year-old bicyclist and pedestrian, and a 12-year-old bicyclist and pedestrian, and a 5-year-old pedestrian.
Christy Rogers,
Hi, Christy Rogers, Town Manager for the Town of Milton.
thank you. Chip Knievel,
Okay, keep going.
Mary Roth,
I'm Mary Roth, Delaware Greenways and Delaware Bayshore Byway.
thank you. Tramika,
Hi, everyone. I'm Mika Cherrywall with DART. I'm one of the planners for Sussex County.
and Peter H.
Peter Haig, Dale Dutch, Chief of Traffic Engineering.
Thanks, Peter.
Is that everyone, Austin?
That's all.
Great, well, what a great group. This is what you hope for when you put a group like this together, to have so many active town people and, you know, involved in different committees, and this is great. So so in terms of the meeting purpose, it's always important, we're not just here just to talk. What do we want to achieve coming out of this particular meeting? Beyond even the broader study that we're part of, like what are our hopes just when this meeting ends that we want to feel like we've accomplished? So we do want to develop a shared understanding of the existing conditions and key issues. So what's out there? Yeah, we know kind of what's out there, but we want to know what's out there from your lens, from people who work in this town, who enjoy this town, live in this town, or parents in this town, whatever your role may be. We want to begin discussing a vision for SR 16 in Milton. We're not going to get, to the end of that today, but we want to have that discussion. And then we do want to review our public involvement approach. So those are kind of our three things that I'm going to hope we will achieve by the end of this meeting. So Austin's going to now stay up there, and we're going to go over that background study area and scope. And again, we do want discussion, but we also want to get to some of the other areas in the agenda. So we'll try to keep this moving.
Sure, thank you so much. So just to go into some background about the study, many of you are probably familiar with the Coastal Corridor study. Started in 2019. We finished that final report earlier this year. Was a large regional study looking at Route 16 and Route 9 from the state line, the Maryland state line, over to Route 1, and looking at that network really and understanding, where traffic was coming from, where it was going to, trying to understand and just understand and learn more about those conditions. We split that project up into two areas, so you'll see in orange on the screen, the western project, which had their own report come out earlier this year as well, and the eastern portion, which you all are a part of in this group. And as a result of both of those projects, we had several sub-studies come out of that, one of which was the SR 16 corridor study. We also want to reference the Milton Comprehensive Plan, which is also some of the background for this. And part of our, hopefully our conversation today, we can relate back to the comprehensive plan and really trying to implement, the vision of the plan. So looking at, understanding what it looks like to have a through road versus a local road, right? And what that means for getting traffic, to places within town, getting traffic through town and across town, stuff like that. Also looking at understanding what would be needed to implement the complete streets, type of feel. So, making sure we can accommodate, vehicles, but also pedestrians, bicyclists, transit, accessibility for people with disabilities, so on and so forth. Making sure that whatever kind of improvements we do discuss, are accommodating for all those different types of modes. And then the last one is understanding, what you all want Route 16 to look like again, making sure we can meet the need for people, goods, services, and people that are coming through town, to town, that, so on and so forth. Our study area for this specific SR16 study went a few miles west of the town limits. So not exactly including Ellendale, although obviously, we talk about everything here in terms of a network. So we'll want to understand kind of the to and through from the western portion of the study, north to Reynolds Mill and Union Street Extension, east to Route 1, and south to about a mile north of US 9. So everything in green there is kind of our boundary for this specific study. And then obviously we're looking at SR16 specifically, which is the corridor itself, but everything green is that network that we're going to be focused on in more specific. Just some of our guiding principles, again, kind of some more background for what we hope to achieve with this, and kind of pulling some basic points out of this comprehensive plan goals. Improving safety, so making sure we're implementing a safe system approach. That's kind of been a lot of the center of a lot of DelDOT's traffic engineering efforts over the past few years recently. Designing for all road users, as I said, that complete streets approach towards any type of improvement project that we're doing now. Increasing connectivity across 16 and through 16. And then kind of with those things, making sure we're supporting other goals that are related but not necessarily the direct purview of the DOT. So supporting the economic and environmental sustainability and resilience goals that you all have for your town and your region. In terms of the scope of the project, so right now we're working on phase 1 of the project, which will go through June of next year, the end of the state fiscal year 25. Again, this is the focus on the 16 corridor as it exists today. Looking at understanding what traffic looks like through the area right now, identifying some of those potential short and long-term improvements. And then as a result of that, this phase of the study, we will be coming up with some preliminary concept designs for the town, for short and long-term improvements. And those will all be documented in a report. And then as a side note, again, as mentioned, this is being coordinated with the ATP, which you all are a part of and have been contributing to. And so the goal of kind of doing these projects at the same time is that they will have elements that connect and relate to each other. And that kind of helps us make sure that we're bringing a more comprehensive understanding of the project as a whole to you all when we think about solutions and improvements and things like that. Then the next phase of our study, which will continue after the ATP is complete, we'll be looking at what kinds of improvements alternatives could come out of something different, right? So we talk about, we understand, if we're going to change the design of 16 and what kind of traffic and modes it supports, what does that mean for what kind of traffic does the road handle, right? Understanding capacity, things like that. And so looking at and understanding what kinds of alternatives could be implemented to solve, if there were to be issues that came up with our design of 16, what that might look like for you all, and 16. So understanding those improvements, understanding what we might need to put in place short and long term. And then as a result of that, the same kind of deliverable. So we'll put together some concept designs and then report those findings and talk about next steps with you all.
So, we'll just pause for a second there. Anything you saw or heard there that surprised you or that you don't understand or, you know, in terms of more process related right now? We're not in the substance right here yet, but just kind of process. Yeah, there.
A few pages back, there was a note at the bottom of the page about the study and that, current numbers and stuff don't indicate any new lanes, so that will be one thing that people have already said, we need more lanes through the town, that kind of thing. So already said that is not a need for the current. And then the project to develop the future, how does that mesh with what's currently going on with the so-called paved rehab that's underway in that area?
Right. Well, and, you know, that note's important because, you know.
It's important, but it should be larger and bigger because
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody else in the room picked that up.
Well,
Maybe Randy did.
Well, we're gonna-
She reads everything.
we're gonna spend more time on that, but, you know, data is always at the heart of everything we do. We want to know what is out there now, and Leah's gonna spend some time on that coming up, where we think things are going. But, you know, when you're talking about a town, right, it's not always just about, you know, what the traffic is on that road. You know, it's how does everything kind of work together? So we want to look at this kind of holistically, but that's just a fact. What that says right there is what it is.
Pretty much what I've seen is any traffic problem that you can identify in Milton, if you take time and go to any other small town in the region, you can find the same traffic problem. So we're not by ourselves here.
That's for
Some
sure.
people's popular opinion.
Is there someone online who, I saw you guys looking, no? Okay,
Jamie Whitehouse from the county has joined us.
okay, great.
Application.
So, we're gonna bring Leah up and we're gonna go over some of those existing conditions and spend a little bit more time on some of the things you were just raising.
I'm here. Thank you, and Mayor, thank you for raising that point. For those of you who are interested as to how we reached that note conclusion, the coastal corridor study is online and fully documents kind of how we got there. And now I will say, that was a very high level preliminary traffic analysis. And as you all know, growth in Sussex County is kind of at an interesting level right now, right? It's been really fast, but we all remember back in 08-09 when we thought it was gonna be really fast and then everything went away for 10 years. So the department's in an interesting position where we have to kind of shake our crystal ball and do our best guess at what's gonna happen long-term. So I will say in the background right now, we are working with DelDOT on their traffic model, which is that goal at kind of anticipating the future. And they're gonna be looking at kind of a low, medium, and high growth scenario. And they'll take what that looks like and what that does to our roads. And that's not just 16, that's the network, everything in that big green area. And then what we're working on right now as to what 16 looks like in town, we'll kind of plug into that. So we'll kind of have a sense for, okay, if we change the street this way, what will that do if we have low growth or high growth? So that is coming next. But right now, we really think it's important to start with the vision, because really it's your street and it needs to serve your needs and the community's needs. And if those traffic models do yield a kind of more traffic and that note is no longer valid, then we begin to look at the network as a whole. And are there other east-west corridors that aren't through the heart of your town that could work to absorb some of that through traffic instead of sending it right through town? So that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'm gonna walk through some existing condition stuff. And, you know, we've been working on this a lot with the active transportation plan. I got something to add there?
One comment.
Yes.
Just say your name before you make the comment, just so people online know.
I'm Dick Trask, Milton, Planning and Zoning. One thing to note from, 16, at least in my mind, is from a zoning point of view, that's our commercial area. There's very little residential, either planned or even there right now, to be honest with you. So, you know, most of the development on 16 right now is associated with, our commercial, corridor through to town. And as we ran into on a couple issues during planning and zoning meetings, when a company moves in to a particular area along 16, they want to dictate how you get in and out of their place, what their place looks like, and how it interfaces with the rest of the town, which sometimes doesn't always work. So the other aspect of 16 coming through town is we get a lot of, in the summertime, we get a lot of shore traffic coming in from the west. So putting in stop signs 100, 200 feet away from a traffic light can cause havoc in my mind, you know, things of that nature.
And we do have Peter Haig online, who's head of Bell traffic, so he definitely has been involved throughout the area, and I know many of you have worked directly with him, so that's a big piece of this, so, agreed. So, traffic aside right now, we're gonna focus on some of the conditions on the ground as that relates to some of those complete streets goals, and complete streets really means kind of what it sounds like, which is a street is not just for cars. We have other people who use it, right? People walking, people biking, freight, freight we know is a really big issue here in town and how that navigates the area. A little bit of transit as well. So, and increasingly some of those micro-mobility devices, I don't know if y'all are seeing more electric scooters or electric skateboard, people traveling in different ways, and safety is a real goal there. We know right now pedestrian facilities, they're there and then they're gone. We have some constraints. I think my favorite example is the sidewalk to the laydown area. And that's not a very useful facility right now, right? Unless the sidewalk or bike facility are continuous, they're not really serving a goal. So one of the things, especially when we're talking about traffic in the summer, if you live within half a mile, quarter mile of the food line or the McDonald's when it's there, it would be nice to be able to walk there, and then you're not putting another car on the road and sitting in that traffic or creating more traffic. But right now it's really hard to do that because getting across and along the road is difficult. I know there's a new light coming in at Mulberry Extended, but that light will not allow for, there's not gonna be a new crosswalk across 16 because there's no sidewalk to receive that crosswalk, right? So although we will have a stop there, and improved crosswalks kind of along the road on the south side, we're not getting over the road. So some of those things where it's like, okay, how can we improve on that? Bike facilities, we've talked about this a lot with the active transportation plan. I'm not gonna dwell on it, except to say, again, we have a similar situation where we have side paths. Those are a little wider than sidewalks, right? 10 feet instead of 5. They're designed for people walking and biking. Honestly, that's probably feels a little safer biking on that than in this bike lane, right? For those of us who ride. But again, side path. That cemetery is not going anywhere, right? These are constraints we need to work around and figure out a meaningful way to get around some of these things. So just beginning to think about kind of our obstacles. So the road right now as it works, it is a major collector. It is a state road, as you all know. And the speed kind of tapers down as we come into town from 50 down to 35. I'm curious to hear from you if you feel like people are going the speed limit or not. That's an interesting question when we ask that often. That is a key thing we want to do. The road probably, if we want people to drive slower, should feel a little different, maybe feel a little tighter to actually have folks realize, okay, we're entering a place, right? Where this isn't just a through road, and we'll talk some more about that in a minute. And here's those traffic volumes. So again, these are average annual volumes. So that does not account for that summer peak. We did study that summer peak a lot with the coastal corridor study. There is a pretty good bump. We have numbers for both times of year. But one interesting thing I wanted to point out, so the wider and more red is higher volumes. Route 1 obviously and 113 are the highest volume segments. And you'll see it's pretty high actually coming in across 30 into town, but then it gets lighter again between Route 30 and Route 5 and Route 1. And that's because a lot of this traffic coming from the west is jumping south through Milton because they don't want to drive on 1. So they're redirecting and kind of creating their own bypass with your local roads around Route 1 to get down there. And a lot of that traffic peels off on 30. We were able to look at this in detail with the coastal corridor study, but a decent amount of it continues through and kind of comes down through Milton. So we know that's happening, and I'm sure you see it every day.
You call it you say it comes through on our roads. It's actually your road.
Yes, it is state roads, yeah, but it's your town, so.
It's our town, but it's your road.
Quick thing in the chat from Dara. She had just mentioned the commercial or the residential development on 16 and suggested that for eastbound 16 should be 30 miles an hour.
Thank you. And yeah, also there is some apartments on 16 and some residential to the west. So yeah, keeping that in mind too. Those folks are kind of isolated out there right now, as far as connectivity to the town. We also, have been looking at crash data a lot for these studies. Again, safety is a main goal. So this map on the left is pedestrian crashes, and you'll see we kind of have a cluster in the downtown area and then a cluster along 16. So fortunately, none of these are fatalities, and this is all the way back through 2009. But looking broadly at vehicular crashes, again, same patterns with motor vehicle crashes, but more crashes with cars up on the 16 corridor. So again, we do know there's a safety issue. Now, DelDOT looks at crash volumes across the whole state and kind of staggers them. So I will say this is not at the top of the list for the region, but it is for the immediate area. That's kind of where we're seeing the issues. We're also well aware there's a transportation improvement district idea floating out there. I know it's floating right now. We don't know where it's going, but we are in touch with Sarah Coakley and the team with DelDOT planning and are keeping our finger on that as it may relate to this, depending on where that goes. We're not going to get into that here now, but we're aware. I did want to highlight for you all some projects, existing DelDOT projects in the region. By region, I just mean surrounding area. So we do have two major improvements right now on either end of our study area. So at 113 and 16, they are getting a grade separated intersection. That is in DelDOT's budget. We're pretty far out from that, but it is getting built similar to what is under construction right now at 1, right? So either end, we're gonna have no traffic lights anymore. It's gonna be kind of a grade separated configuration. For those of you who are interested, there will be bike and pedestrian facilities built into those projects. So those are two major investments on either end of the corridor already. There's also here at the 30 intersection, a roundabout being put in. All this information is available on the DelDOT website if you're curious about more details. That is a safety improvement because that was a really big crash concern. We have the new traffic signal I mentioned a little bit ago. And then heading down, also the Sand Hill Road at 30 roundabout, another roundabout down at Cave Neck. So roundabouts, they're a big safety improvement. I don't want to get into a big discussion about why. I don't think we're looking at that on 16 just because of space constraints, but a lot of the safety improvements in the area DelDOT is approaching with that kind of roundabout.
And for those here, we do have a card up here with information about how to, if you want more information on any project that DelDOT has going on, you can grab one of those and get there.
Okay. So, we also, look at that future land use. So you mentioned commercial. This is the county's future land use map. It does identify the area, obviously municipal limits here and kind of developing area around, of Sussex. Y'all are growing quite a bit. With the granary and other developments coming in, and again, the comp plan for the town also shows kind of some future growth areas north of 16 and kind of heading west. The green areas are agricultural conservation parcels, so they're not going to be contributing to that future volume because they're kind of off the books as far as development goes. Do you have something to add to that one?
No, well, it's actually the brown ones are the purplish ones.
Yeah, so agriculture easement to the purple and then, and the ag district is the hash. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's actually, that is an older land use growth map. We have a newer one.
We'll get the update. Is it on the website yet?
Yes, and Dorothy's back there and she and I still have a conversation about the final product, but it's actually got passed, but we're gonna revisit it.
Okay.
Because that's not showing the granary as being part of town.
Okay.
Where it already is.
So note for the record and for those on the call, we'll probably update the slide with the more up-to-date map before we post it on the website. Thank you for that. Speaking of development, there's a lot. So the granary, I noted that one specifically because it's quite large and they're actually moving. So that is down here kind of southwest of the town on Sand Hill Road. A number of other parcels kind of bringing town. This really big one is a pretty old one, but it's still out there. So wanted to note that. I don't think it's active right now.
Well, just the southeast corner of 30 and 16, that big purple section there. That's all being developed.
Yeah.
It's already improved. So it's 600 some homes plus.
Yeah, so and once you look at this online, we do have the number of residential units in parentheses behind the name. So again, just so you all know, we are aware of these things and kind of factoring that into the growth. Pretty loud. I'll keep talking. And again, we've talked a little bit about the agricultural preservation areas and development restrictions, but here's some a little further out of town. So again, in this instance, it's the blue that are protected, so. All right, so all that to be said, the initial things we've kind of flagged as key issues, and please fill in the blanks if there are things we've missed. We see a need for a long-term vision. Development on 16 has kind of been piecemeal, and that's reflected in the infrastructure out there and kind of the sidewalk and pathways to nowhere. As you know, development coordination reviews, you know, the Royal Farms, McDonald's, stuff's getting done, but there's still not kind of holistic connection to how that's done. It's still kind of piecemeal. We know we don't have good facilities for people walking and biking. And also getting across the road is a problem, right? We only have one signalized crosswalk to get over the road, and that's, you know, not ideal if you're trying to walk or bike for transportation. And even for driving, it kind of funnels. I know the most complaints I had from folks were folks trying to get around that light at 5 because they get stuck. That's kind of the pinch point. And obviously with the development right up on the intersection, there's not much room to widen and have more turn lanes or anything like that, especially on 5 itself. So that gets into that access management also, like how you get in and out. Paul and I were getting gas at your gas station at Mulberry Street Extended, and getting in and out of that was a treat. We gritted our teeth and went for it. And also, you know, what's that development activity gonna look like? Because if we do have kind of a master plan, then you can start having a conversation with development as it comes in. Okay, this is what we want. And this is what, you know, if we're gonna have you all contributing to what this looks like, let's make sure we're having consistency along the corridor. Do we have any?
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
Again, Dick Trask again. You know, I was thinking the other day that what might be a good addition to any kind of new work along Route 16 was maybe that we identify an area that's adjacent to the road, a right of way, if you will, or a potential sidewalk or a drive, what they call those things, drive paths, whatever, multi-use, yeah, thank you. That if we have that area already designated and somebody wants to come in and develop along that line, that area could already be identified and avoided by whoever is trying to develop there. And then if you're gonna build there, you have to put in the sidewalk or the multi-use lane as part of your development. Or because it's already identified in there, a project can go along and just lay the multi-use lane or sidewalk all the way down the road ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is what we do typically if it's on a state road and they have an entrance permit through us, is part of the requirements. Unless, and this is maybe where it kind of slips through the net, if they already have an existing sidewalk, regardless of the condition of it, sometimes we won't require that, but typically we'll make the developer build the multi-use path.
No, I understand that. That's happening on an individual development basis. You know, the storage facility that's going in, the McDonald's, although that's a little bit different. Down the street a little bit more, there's a couple more commercial properties. You might see a sidewalk out along the road in front of those, but they're not connected.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that if there was a right of way along the road already, you could physically connect those things without actually having someone building something there.
Yeah, typically we don't make developers do off-site improvements unless it's like add a signal, like for walkways, pathways, or sidewalks. But yeah, it's a piecemeal thing.
Could we do that?
Why don't we, DelDOT would not, I'm fairly certain DelDOT would not, however, the town, I think, may, I don't know legally how you guys work, you might have some leverage for off-site improvements you could request. But anytime there's a subdivision, a major subdivision or a change of zoning that leads to a subdivision, we do request those improvements.
Well, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other, because when we try to recommend something for a DelDOT road, it usually gets shot down because DelDOT has a different idea.
They're very by the book in that section.
So
Yeah.
why we're here.
Yeah, and that discussion which we just had is exactly why we're here. I mean, and in fact, what we're gonna be going into with our next, we're gonna be going into visioning. I don't know if there's anything more to comment here in terms of, what we've sort of identified as sort of the key issues. If you see like a bucket that we're missing that you wanna add to it.
And you can pull up one more thing on the
Yeah.
conversation?
And then I want to, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, for sure. I will say that is a head that we're reaching with a lot of other state maintained roads around the state where we have these gaps that are obviously sometimes they're 200 feet. There's a need to develop a program and some source of funding to connect them. So yes, that need is identified by us as well. So if
I
you
think I
talk about
told
the
you this
future.
the last time we met. I used to work in the Netherlands. And their road structure as it relates to cars and pedestrians and bikes is just amazing, just absolutely amazing. Because when they think about putting in a road, they also think about putting in the bike road and along with it. It's part of the process.
Right, Randy Meredith, so access management is a big issue for me, because as Mr. Cass said, a developer does one parcel and they get their own driveway, and that is very complicating for pass-through traffic, but also for people who are trying to stop those places. It creates a lot of conflict.
Yeah, every single crossing, like if you're on that sidewalk or that hypothetical future shared use path we're gonna have, that's a place you can get hit, right? And especially when you have cars coming along and wanting to turn right really quick, they may not realize that you're going pretty fast. That is one of the most dangerous crashes, as
Or
you
you've
know.
got big, long lines of cars trying to get out of, for instance, that apartment complex, for instance, and then somebody's coming down with a bike. I mean, they're not looking for that.
Right.
Well, these are the challenging issues that big cities face on a certain level, but then you take a look at a town like Milton, and the mayor said, a lot of the issues you're facing are the same issues other places are facing, but the good news is, we have a process in place now, and the types of discussions and the types of things that are gonna come out of this meeting, again, are not gonna solve the problem tomorrow, but the things that you're gonna see at some point come because of a planning exercise like this. They don't just happen. They've got to be thoughtful and planned and then programmed, and hopefully, we can all be proud of something down the road. So.
We also have another key issue. Dara, do you want me to read your comment, or you're welcome to come on, mic and share with the room?
Oh, thank you very much. This is Dara Schumeyer. I'm on Streets and Sidewalks, and I'm also a longtime resident. I did want to note that I applaud the vision for some sort of multi-use path along 16. I had flagged very early on the very poor connectivity that Milton has to Lewis and Rehoboth, even though that is a primary area of interest for employment and for medical care and all of the rest. We don't have good public transit service. There's no beach bus. There's no way for the one route that serves Milton by DART is not really helpful to most residents. And it's certainly not helpful to our youth who are looking for summer employment. It doesn't really take them to the beach, which is where most of them can get their jobs. So if we can consider, that an extension of the beach bus, for example, and the possibility of a park and ride facility in the vicinity of the new interchange, if that could be part of the planning, that would be really helpful.
Ramika, I saw you came off mute. I would love for you to speak to that.
Oh, thank you, Leah. Dara, I'm glad you mentioned that. As many of you may know, DART just completed our DART Reimagined project study. And in that study, it was determined that there needs to be more direct service between Milton and the beach. And I don't know if you know our current bus 307 that runs between Dover and Lewis. We are actually trying to realign that bus to have a regular stop between those points, so people have opportunity to go from Milton straight to Lewis, as opposed to doing the 303 and the circuitous motion of that to go to Georgetown, to go back to Lewis. So currently we're trying to locate a place for the bus so we can, you know, easily come in town and get back onto out of town as quickly and as easily as possible. So that is one thing that DTC is currently looking into, and any help with this project would be great. And, you know, that's part of the reason why I wanted to be on this committee, to see what we can do collectively to find a better location for us to possibly, I would think more like a parking pool at some place where people can meet to go, as opposed to every street within, and 16 looks like a promising location for that.
Yeah, so by that, Jamika, just to clarify, you mean kind of like a place, a bus stop that has parking, or a place to lock up bikes affiliated with it?
Yes.
Yeah, so that really points to, I think, the importance for the active transportation plan as well, and connecting to that future site. That way folks can get to it, especially our youth who maybe don't have a car or whatever, and hop on the bus to get. Okay, thank you. That's very useful.
Kind of like that location down on Route 1, where all the buses go in there and then directly to the beach.
So Leah, we're doing well time-wise, but why don't we have the visioning sort of prompts, the presentation, and again, keep this discussion going, but just bring a little bit more into it.
Sounds good. So we mentioned complete streets a couple times, and I'm not going to read the slide to you, but let it be known there is a TELDOT's complete streets guide. It is in the process of being finalized. I'll be sure to let y'all know once that is final. But it really does give folks like Paul and Austin a little bit more guidance as to what we mean when we say complete streets, what kind of facilities we're talking about, and we're going to walk through some visuals from that document now. We think it could be a really useful tool and kind of getting us thinking about what this means. One of the biggest components.
I'm going to stop it. As we're going through this, at the end of this section, I am going to kind of pose to you 3 questions. And so I want you to kind of be thinking about these 3 questions as you're hearing the information. You know, how do you currently get to places on 16? What do you currently experience traveling the corridor, the 16 corridor, and what do you want to see in the future for that corridor? So as Leah's kind of providing information, I want you to sort of balance that with, okay, what are those questions, and you know, kind of how do I want to kind of respond to that?
Thanks, Andrew.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So one of the biggest things with complete streets though is speed management. And I know you all have the traffic calming committee and have a pretty good understanding of that, and the reasons why are illustrated by this chart, right? And we're literally talking about protecting bodies from trauma and death. And we know the lower speeds cars are driving, the more chance we have of survival. And also, you know, so those conflicts at a driveway. It's a little less terrifying if a car is going 20, 25. They have time to stop. They have time to see you. Now, when we have cars traveling at higher speeds, that's more of a problem, right? So that is the big thing for protecting vulnerable users, people on bikes, people walking, people who are not protected by a metal cage, but also for people driving. So this chart gets a little bit more into kind of, yes, a car hitting a pedestrian is the most dangerous. So again, we have speeds across the bottom and how risky a fatality is, but 100% being up here in 0. So you see kind of that curve. But a car hitting a fixed object, Austin mentioned, some of the fatalities we have this year are cars literally departing the roadway into people's homes. So that's dangerous for the driver. It's also been fatal for people in that, like some crazy things, hitting a pole, hitting a tree, side impact, cars hitting the side of another car, and head-on crashes are even worse. So again, that curve, like you're not invincible out there. I know a lot of people drive like they are, but you know, we want to protect people driving and we need to design for that. So looking at the kind of, the Complete Streets Guide puts out some sample street types, like how could streets work? So obviously this is not what your down 16 through town looks like, but it sure as heck looks like what it looks like a little bit to the west and a little bit to the east.
That was exactly my idea.
That was exactly your idea, right? So this is kind of the typical ideal street we should be aspiring to if we're a low density highway. Low density means, what do we see on either side of the road? Very low density, right? Agricultural area. Some of the things to think about, narrower lanes, considering a grass shoulder. So instead, right now we have often really wide asphalt shoulders that makes the road feel really open, makes it feel like you can go really fast. So these are some things to consider. That shared use path again, having a nice grass buffer between the edge of the road and that pathway. And you can see here too, these buffers often function as drainage in these areas as well. And keeping shoulders clear of debris. So that's kind of, I think we all can think of places like that. Now, when we go into the Main Street recommendation, we have a much different street, right? And I'm not saying this is 16, this is arguably more like your downtown, the historic downtown, but we see some different features. Obviously setbacks here, how close the building is to the street is a little bit different. This isn't what we see out on 16. It's what you could see. It's what you could plan for if that's the vision to aspire to long term, but it's not what's there right now. That would require changes to your zoning. But it's a little bit different, right? So instead of that side path, we see a sidewalk paired with a separated bike lane. So that bike lane is protected from traffic, but it gives people walking and biking separate spaces. Now, the benefit of that, I think anyone who's walked on a shared use path and had a bike zoom by them and almost knock them over because they're going a little too fast, it helps keep those users separate and can be a little bit nicer when we know we're gonna have a lot of people walking and a lot of people biking. Some other features here, even more narrow roads. And on streets, sometimes you don't need that separated bike lane. If it's a low volume street in town, you could do the share thing. 16 obviously is not that. And then, thinking about green stormwater management and water management too. So that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. And then we get into another example street, right? And this is what we heard from some of your neighbors, Mayor. We want 4 lanes. We need more lanes, right?
Of course.
But I'll tell you, we're gonna talk a little bit more about how much space each of these ideas take up in a little bit. But
Screen takes up a lot.
this takes up a lot of space, right? And a lot of space that you all don't really have out there right now, right? But this kind of, and we could imagine a similar street with just maybe 2 lanes, 3 lanes instead of 4 here as well. But it's a little bit more suburban feeling, right? We have the side paths, we have parking lots, we have kind of bigger stores. So it's a different feel. So we're probably on 16 somewhere between this and that, right? It's like, what do we want to be? These are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And one more graphic from the Complete Streets Guide that we think is very useful is thinking about the street's not going to be same the whole length, right? It's going to transition. It's going to transition from that rural street out to the west, that rural zone where it's, maybe that side path is out that way too, but we'll talk more about that later. To kind of slowing down that speed limit and maybe having that on-road bike lane. And then you're kind of in the slowing down area, I'm thinking even west of 5 right now, west of Mulberry Street Extension, and then you hit kind of your commercial area. And then it could either turn into that side path you're thinking, or that sidewalk and separated bike lane pair, right? Those are things to work through as to what that portion of the road looks like. So it can change, and I think this graphic is very different in thinking about how the way the street is designed is going to tell drivers what to do, right? You're not gonna drive on this the same way you're gonna drive on that. You're gonna feel comfortable going faster, and you should, because there's not as much going on. But once you get into that area, that commercial district, as you described it, where there's a lot of cars turning in and out, there's people, there's kids, there's action, you should be going slow, because there's a lot of things that could be happening.
Well, we have a lot of legacy buildings, if you will, along that route. And thinking about, adding more space between those buildings, you just can't pick a building up and move it back. It's just not feasible. I mean, I've seen it done. It's not feasible.
No, but I'm sure y'all who have been here for a long time, it looks a lot different now than it did 20 years ago. And if we think about 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future, it's gonna change. So when we talk about these visioning exercises, I think it is important to ground ourselves in reality, but it's also important to realize we need to plan now because these projects are expensive. We need to plan now for what it's gonna be. And that's not to say we're not gonna have interim improvements to make it safer. But if we're talking about big change takes big time, but it requires steady work.
Yeah, that's why I think, part of the difficulty of this process is trying to think about what you want, but it's so hard to get sort of there when you're sort of thinking about, God, all the issues it takes to get to what I want. And you have to almost sort of agree, you're gonna just sort of put that to the side right now and start, coming up with a vision and, that vision, could be, I don't know if you ever done any strategic planning, the BHAG, have you ever heard of BHAG? Big, hairy, audacious goals, because they just seem like there's just no way, but you know what? You've got to start somewhere. You've got to try to say, what do we want? And then from there, there's gonna be all sorts of things that'll get in the way of accomplishing that, but if you don't have a goal, a vision, something you're shooting for, I guarantee you're never gonna get there.
So I would say also that, from a planning and zoning point of view, we're looking at these new opportunities for growth in the town all the time. And without us knowing ahead of time that we need that much space to be able to put the building in, we don't know that yet. So we may okay a building that is closer to the road, and that really doesn't, it has a negative effect on the future of what you're trying to do. So the quicker that we know ahead of time that you're going to aspire to that particular goal, it makes it easier for us to be able to say to the potential applicant, well, you're gonna have to move your building back, another 10 feet or 12 feet or whatever like that.
So Leah's gonna go through sort of some examples of, different things that have been done in different places. Again, no two places are ever the same, so there's obviously differences, but just to kind of help kind of get everyone sort of thinking of, what could be, what has happened somewhere else.
Yeah, so just a couple other places, this is, example from companies. And obviously, it's impossible to find a road that's exactly like what y'all have. This is a more residential area, but I think it gets the point across of how you can have incremental change and short-term change. So they were working with a lot of space. They had 4 lanes, but honestly, you have a lot of pavement out there right now, because of those big shoulders. So you do have space, right? And their shoulders, maybe they don't need to be 8-10 feet wide like they are right now. Maybe we can reallocate some of that space that's already occupied by the right of way to something else, right? And, they did a repaving. They did a repaving project, and they went from 4 lanes to 3 lanes with a center turn lane. And for those of us in the industry, this can often be more efficient than that, because when you have someone stopping in this turn lane to turn, you have that according effect, because everyone trying to use it as a passing lane gets stuck behind and they have to wiggle around. So often there is more throughput and efficiency with a 3-lane section than a 4-lane section. In some places, we can study that, we can understand that. I know some of your improvement, the Royal Farms and the McDonald's coming in are gonna start putting in turn lanes at the intersection.
I got it.
Thank you. So that was kind of their interim safety improvement. I'm sure it probably had a lot of benefit. It also has the ability, then you have space for bike lanes. Again, they're not separated from traffic. They probably don't feel great, but it's someplace for you to bike if you need to. But then their long-term goal, when they had a little bit more money and planned over time, they started putting in these nice median crossing islands and also created a little turn pocket. And they also came in and did sidewalks and pathways. So they did a sidewalk on one side of the street and that multi-use path on the other side of the street. And that means confident cyclists like myself, I'd probably still ride in the road here. I'm pretty comfortable. But if I was riding with my niece and nephew, I have the ability to come up off that shoulder and be safe and out of traffic. So it's option. So here's an example of a place that kind of went through this process and moved. And over here, you can see kind of that long term. Now, that street looks and feels a lot different than that. I think you'll all agree, right? I think it looks very nice.
And you can see the time frame. I mean, that's 15 years though. It just didn't happen. I'm sure there was many discussions like we're having in some room in Richfield, Minnesota.
And opportunities too for trees, opportunities for beautification. I mean, I'm not gonna say 16 is the ugliest street I've seen, but maybe it's the prettiest street I've seen either.
So I'm not sure that your idea of, I'm gonna drive on the road anyway is beneficial, because the drivers on that road know that there's an aisleway for bikes and pedestrians and are less cognizant of the fact there might be a bike on that.
Oh yeah, that's a risk I take,
their lane.
for sure. That's a risk I take, and I can gauge that risk for myself. I'm legally allowed to be there, but.
Your risk for yourself, but it's also for the driver. You're risking the driver too.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of trade-offs.
So all sorts of trade-offs, yeah, and being up on that pathway is also an option.
It is important to remember that you do have a legal right to ride a bike on the street. It's
I
not,
understand
you're
that,
not
but
violating, it's a.
I'm just thinking of
But
perception.
I'm gonna use the powers that I've given myself as facilitator. Like, it's a good discussion, but we wanna be above this discussion. We're getting into sort of like, you know, the micromanaging of it. We wanna be much higher up in our thinking right now. But I appreciate the conversation, and you're right. The laws are the laws right now.
Okay, another example that's a little bit more commercial that I felt kind of mixed commercial and residential, but I felt a little bit more similar to what we have out here, really big shoulder. Again, 2-lane road, so this is maybe more similar to what we're dealing with, a nice wide shoulder. And they were able, like, not the exact same location, but to kind of come in, install a closed section, so curbing where there's currently no curbing, and kind of reallocate the space they already had. So the sidewalk's in roughly the same place. To reallocate these really wide lanes and create a turn lane and a little bit of a better profile. So again, reducing their
In 40
shoulders.
years, that's gonna look really nice.
Yeah.
When the trees grow up, I mean, that stuff takes a long time, but, between that, they put in parts of a concrete beam.
Yeah, the time, yeah. Come grab a seat.
Come on over, have a seat, Jim.
Yeah, go grab one of those seats.
Yeah.
And when the meeting's over, just sign it, you don't have to do it.
And another section of that same corridor, again, you know, the gas stations made me think of some specific locations. But again, you know, we're not changing everything, but a little bit of improvement works, you know, having curb where there's open, being able to clean up some of these areas with striping and just making sure folks know where they should be. So again, this isn't a huge wholesale change here, but you really can do a lot to tell people where to be. You know, we created a bike lane, they were able to see, maybe we don't need 2 lanes in that direction, but we still need 2 lanes in this direction, you know, playing with some of the space we have to have efficiency. And I think this real life example too is continuing to iterate, but here's kind of our interim condition. So this is just some thoughts as to how other communities have approached this. So then I'm gonna walk us through what we look at, and I know you all drive this corridor a lot. Just gonna walk us down from starting to the west of town and kind of coming through. So, the Russell Street area, the homes over there, they're kind of isolated right now. There's really no way for them to get into town safely without walking or biking on the shoulder. Coming through, again, approaching Mulberry Street, and again, this is the place where that new light's going, but again, folks still aren't gonna be able to get across. We have a nice new sidewalk going in right now. That's a great improvement, step in the right direction. Continuing, approaching Route 5, we know, Royal Farms is gonna be coming in, so for that overgrown mass of trees, there will be a side path there. So that's a side path on one corner, but then across the street at McDonald's, we're back to a sidewalk again. So that speaks to that kind of, okay, what are we doing? One or the other. And then arguably, some of the biggest constraints around what we can do are these businesses through here, right? They're very close to the road. The only parking they have to support their businesses, right off the road. So, you know, these are some of the realities that we're gonna have to work with.
There's a storage facility that on the right-hand side that's going in, and we'll have a multi-use.
But it's gonna
stop along your parcel there.
And it'll stop right here?
No, back up. Cause there's a lot in between,
Okay, so it'll be,
so be there, yeah.
and then there'll be a gap.
Yeah.
A kind of dead end anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have a point I'd like to make, if you don't mind.
Please.
John Collier for the record. And you pointed out that there's gonna be a multi-use path on the Royal Farm side of the intersection, sidewalks on the other side. Your agency is responsible for the sidewalks on the other side because they granted the entrances, and as part of the condition for the entrances, they were required to put in concrete sidewalks. So the inconsistency that appears on 16 is not necessarily the town's issue, it's DelDOT's issue.
Yeah, Dick was spot on about that. Even our development coordination section, they have different reviewers. Sometimes they come at different times. And if there's not that clear guidance, even internally, they'll make decisions
Well, I
that are
understand
binding.
that, but you know, sometimes it's like, you know, you guys don't need to figure out what you want. No, you guys at DelDOT need to figure out what you want on your road.
That's why we're here.
Okay, I just want to make that point. Because a lot of times, even though it's DelDOT what we're dealing with these issues, the town still looks at the leadership of the town and says, why aren't you taking care of this?
Then
There's
they hand out sidewalk waivers.
there's always an opportunity for finger pointing. And I'm not trying to be, like Mr. Happy Guy over here, but for today, again, we understand the shortcomings that are out there and some of the problems in the existing process. But if coming out of this process in 2 years, a year and a half, whatever time schedule, we have something very clear, that's very clear about what the town wants. That way, anyone at DelDOT will have to look at exactly what you guys are looking for and balance all decisions around that. But nothing will ever be perfect. It's an imperfect process. Yes, sir.
And Evan Brigham, at this particular intersection here, with the nature of the development that's going on with the McDonald's and the Royal Farms, you're actually creating a very attractive thing, Royal Farms and McDonald's, both for the kids in town, the people who walk in town. So anything that you can do to make it as safe as possible for people to get across that street on foot, either from the Cypress Grove development, which is a significant development. There's a lot of people out of there. There's already a lot of young families and kids living out there. And being able to get to Royal Farms that sells soda and fried chicken and candy, and get to McDonald's, which is clearly, it's just beckoning to the children. Being able to get safely across that street is, I don't know what you can do there, because you have the combination of the space constraints, a very heavy volume most times of the day, and the intersection binds up to the point that people become extremely frustrated and they begin behaving irrationally and dangerously and lashing out at each other. So anything that we can do to just enforce the fact that you're not allowed to scare or, threaten children with motor vehicles just because you don't want to sit here any longer is something that would be helpful. So
I will say, Evan, again, obviously Austin and Lee are gonna be taking the lead on this plan, but there's no reason, just because we've made recent changes somewhere, doesn't mean we can't plan for a project that'll be here in 25 years. That can go in and clean that up. Hopefully it'll be sooner, but it's never too late to that wasn't the right thing to do, but, and then include that in the plan for the future and something else.
So one thing I can,
One clarity, for everybody that's sitting here, McDonald's doesn't have a entrance from the street to get into McDonald's. The entrance for McDonald's is in the parking lot. So you have to enter the parking lot to be able to get into.
if you're driving, yes.
So there's no turn, right turn, left turn, whatever, as you would have for Royal Farms for the McDonald's thing.
Yeah, and one thing we can do as well is make sure that we have the improvements that are coming as part of that Royal Farms development. Seen it already.
So we're running a little behind.
Yep.
So I want to give you a chance to kind of go through, so maybe we'll let her get through a few of these examples and not have a little discussion for a few slides.
Yeah. Moving along, so again, we have a pretty big shoulder. When we're talking about walking and biking, things like this are not fun, right? When you have it's essentially a pretty high speed free right. That's the kind of thing, when a driver's looking at that, they're just looking at traffic and accelerating to try and join the lane, right? They are not looking for a pedestrian coming or a bike coming. So if this does get wider and turn into a pathway instead of a sidewalk, that's the kind of facility that, why can't they just come out and turn right like that instead of zip lane? So things like that, we'll be keeping an eye on. Those pocket bike lanes, continuing further down, there's our other sidewalk example. That is one pinch point in the right of way, so we have pretty wide right of way for most of the corridor, except as far as we can tell, this parcel has been there long enough.
And it's not in town limits, that's the problem too.
Also so that is part of why we do have Ginny Whitehouse from the county on the line. So look at that pretty picture. But yeah, solving these problems is definitely gonna be a multi-agency approach. And then again, heading out to the eastern edge of town with the other new development. And this is an old picture. Obviously, this striping has changed since then a little bit. But again, other new development putting in a side path that terminates. But there's kind of that on-ramp, right, for bikes getting back onto the road if they're continuing. So that's just walking through roughly what's out there right now. So we've been talking about this a little the whole time, but Andrew, your questions are on the screen.
Magically, they appeared. But yeah, we just want to have discussion right now. We want to, again, try to get at a higher level of our discussion, but, you know, and we don't have to take these in order, it's just, and we don't even have to do these, it could be anything that you all wanna talk about. But I think it's always helpful to have a couple prompts just to make, you know, people have an idea of what we're looking for, but, you know, what do you wanna see for 16 in the future? I mean, what are, you know, if you had your wish list of 3 things that you would want, what would those 3 things be? And the people on by Zoom, the people here in the room, we're clearly not gonna have enough time to, you know, it's not like we have 3 hours to go through this, so I want to encourage you, you know, if after this meeting, you have ideas and thoughts, you can email them to us. You know, you can take time and really think about, you know, what your thoughts are, and you can share them to us in writing as well. So if anyone wanted to jump in. We'll go to our new gentleman here.
I
Well, why don't you-
apologize. I thought this was just gonna be a walk around exhibits kind of a meeting,
Okay,
like the one that
more
was
like an
down,
open house.
right, like the one that was
Got
held down at the Milton Consolidated School, so I apologize for coming late and not understanding the format. I saw the article in the Gazette.
Jump right in. Well, introduce yourself first.
Jeff Stevens, I am a member of the Milton Planning Commission, and we just had an application, our last meeting, just a few weeks ago, for a Dunkin' Donuts, which wants to occupy one of the 4 parcels in front of the Cypress Grove apartment complex. I was somewhat shocked to learn that when that project was approved, DelDOT did not require a traffic light at that entrance. So it was just inconceivable to me that there could be a project with that many people living in it, using one main entrance to get into and out of their apartment homes, with now a dentist office approved, a Dunkin' Donuts who wants to get approved, adjacent to, at least according to the plan, another fast food restaurant, with the 4th parcel, who knows what it will be. And all of these motions, all of these movements are going to be in and out on 16, just, in my opinion, just exacerbating the problems that we have just a little further west. So help me understand why, with that kind of density and with those 4 commercial parcels in front, why someone at DelDOT didn't say, you know, maybe we better require a traffic light there.
I don't know if anyone here is in a position to respond. If not, we can certainly follow up.
No.
You know,
I'm sure that there was probably a traffic impact study that was done that very clearly lays out what their logical decisions. Whether or not that is grounded in reality, that's up to your interpretation, but they do have a report stamped by a professional traffic operations engineer that's going to explain why they made those decisions.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to do a little more visioning.
Yeah, that's.
Than that, so what I am picturing. Say I'm 15 years older than this, I'm 60, okay? That's weird. Okay, I'm 60 and I still wanna ride my bike and I wanna use it more than a car. Right now, I'm not comfortable, if my kids are with me, riding my bike to the grocery store. It got hairy once and I told them I will not do that again. So I'll go by myself, no problem. I want that when I'm 60, for that to be a thing that I'm comfortable doing. I wanna be able to ride my bike to that grocery store and back, and I wanna make it there and back. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. I also want it to be, there, so McDonald's is coming. I already know a teenager who's gonna be working there, who lives in town and will be riding a bike to their job. So that'll be during the day, and at night, this kid is gonna have to get through that intersection to get to their job, and I want that to be as safe as possible for them. Just from that example of, there's gonna be kids working at McDonald's, there are gonna be kids traveling to McDonald's, they're gonna be going to Royal Farms, but if there's gonna be a Dunkin' Donuts, they're gonna go there too. I want them to have the best and clearest and most obvious way to get to those places. And I want that to be clear to drivers that they need to be careful enough for this situation. Yeah.
Great. Let me ask a question, and then this may tie into what you're But, as people who live in this town, when you think about 16, do you envision it being a spot where you're trying to get sort of people through it as quickly as you can? Or could you care less how quickly people get through? You want to slow them down as much as they can to kind of accomplish some of the other things that you're talking about?
There are other places on 16, and correct me if I'm wrong, where it does drop down to 25. Right? So why is Milton excluded from that? Why
Well,
don't we have that?
But I'm gonna assume in your response that you do want it to be slower.
I do.
That's what I was
I
trying.
want it to be
Let me speak on that.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
And just introduce yourself just for the people on the.
Derek Harvey, Chief of Police. I have some technical difficulty with how a lot of stuff's done as far as you have to have these traffic studies done to get whatever situation you come out with at the end. So I would like to have already dropped the speed limits, but the improvements won't be done to the roadways if the speed limit is lower, because you have a higher threshold that you have to, whatever, for your calculations that you do that truly make no sense to me. But I would like to have those improvements done and then drop the speed limit with the improvements, and not drop the speed limit now and then not have any of the improvements made. But that's the difficulty I have.
But from a vision standpoint, something you're aspirationally would like, maybe not having those two things connected, and you want improvements made, but you want slower speeds. Is that what I heard you say?
I know how to get slower speeds. That's not even an issue. We know the mechanism to get that. It's
Park
just
your car out there.
the extra improvements.
What improvements are you referring to, just curious?
Turn lanes, like 5 and 16, if we were to have dropped that down to 25 now, rural farms would have to put in those turn lanes shortly. So those are the types of things that I don't want to block up, because we have those thoughts of, we want those extra improvements. But
We should facilitate that conversation more in the future, because if there's lower speed limits you want, but that's like your main concern, it might be worth digging into that a little deeper and seeing how set in stone that relationship is. Because I hear that and I find that a little unfortunate.
yeah, I mean, that's really just it. I mean, I would have already had it at 16, because Ellendale's been that for 100 years.
But again, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but I'm seeing head nods and so forth, that slower speeds is seen as desirable for out on 16.
Especially right through town where we have significant commercial development happening. You know, I mean, it's already.
But again, like that traffic light, if it was 25 miles per hour, probably wouldn't have been approved to put that in there, but with it at the speed limit that it is now, it's.
You don't want
It's a
this
different
speed
level, but
reduction
yeah,
to
prevent the improvement.
exempt everybody
Right.
from making
Right.
it safer in other ways.
So people know that that's in the back of my brain.
Right.
Yes.
For a long time now, but this is what it takes to get other stuff, so you kind of gotta.
Yeah, I cut you.
One idea that I have that I'd like to see out into the future, I'm not sure how we could actually do this. But the only way to get from, let's say, south of Milton, on Route 5, for instance, to 16, let's say 16, is to drive directly through town. And I'm not sure, while from a commercial point of view, that might be a good idea. But from a traffic flow point of view, I would prefer to see an option coming up Route 5 that goes off in this direction if you're going towards Route 1 and you don't have to go through town, and goes off in this direction, which is east, west. If you're not going through town, you're just going out towards Route 30. Rather than driving every vehicle that goes north around here, right through the center of town, including tractor trailers. That's something I would like to say.
So you're talking about,
Like
which
a
way were
bright-
you coming into, were you on 16 or were you coming up 5 when you?
I'm coming up 5.
Coming up 5 from the south. So you're talking about kind of getting around
Yeah.
town. on either side. Okay.
Just, real quick, I just checked the chat. Dara, agrees online, Route 5. Oh, she said two things. One was they agree they want to be the same with Ellendale, 25-mile speed limits through Milton. And then also she said she agrees with the, Route 5
I agree.
bypassing town.
So, Leah, we've got 10 minutes left in our meeting. Yeah.
That's productive.
Yeah. So I'm looking at you to sort of see how you want to use the last 10 minutes, or, you know, I guess if we went a minute over, no one would.
No one will get too upset. Well, firstly, I want to say this is the start of our conversation, not the end, right? And also, as much as I enjoy all your expertise, you're not the only people who get to weigh in on this, right? We do want to engage with the broader community. To that end, we do have another one of those drop-in workshops on the books for December 3rd up at, we're at Mariner for this one, unfortunately. The elementary school is not available. So we want to keep this going. We invite you all to come to that. We can continue this conversation.
Next one, Q&A before we do the final wrap up.
Yeah.
I hate to jump in like that, but there's someone who I just noticed, this is an anonymous attendee. Is there a possibility to ask Royal Farms to reconsider their location and possibly move it to the intersection by Camp's Liquor Store? I figured I'd ask because they're members of planning and zoning in attendance. Yeah. Do y'all want to
The
respond to
short
that?
answer to that is it's impossible at this point.
Okay,
They've already, yeah, they own the parcel, they've got approvals.
the short
They're
answer
just
for
waiting
planning and
on
zoning in
DelDOT
town is it's
approval.
impossible.
If
Okay.
they would, if someone wanted that, they should have talked to us 2 years ago.
Yeah, if it's zoned for it,
It is
it
zoned
can
for
get
it,
built.
Yeah.
it's approved, and again, you know,
Okay, Leah, keep going with.
Yeah, so this is the beginning, you know, and we have some other fun little things for y'all to ponder on, you know, and we're gonna bring next time, we're gonna skip through this one. Skip through that, so right away, we talked about this at a high level, we have about 60 feet out there right now, okay? Now, what we can do with that, who knows? Great example, Royal Farms, they're needing an additional 10 feet to that right away, so it's gonna be wider at their frontage, and they're also adding a 15-foot permanent easement for that pathway. So as redevelopment occurs, we do have opportunities to grab more space to do good things. But again, that's very incremental. We have a lot of, and honestly, do we want our mom and pop businesses who have been here, who have really cool offerings gone, you know? And when we, as transportation professionals, look at this, we know we have minimum dimensions for things, right? Like a sidewalk's gotta be at least 5 feet. That pathway we've been talking about, it's gotta be at least 10 feet. You need at least 5 feet of space between the edge of that pathway and the edge of the road. So all these things add up. So, you know, looking at what's out there now, we have space, how do we use that space? And then getting into our facilities, a wider street, whether that's more vehicular lanes, which again, I don't think we necessarily need. We may need a turn lane here or there, need more space, and kind of looking at what that looks like. So here's our 2-lane complete street, right? So if we start adding the bells and whistles onto this little, this is very abstract, it's only an estimate, I just drew a box on an aerial photo. But if we go from the center line, kind of having that lanes for cars, a turn lane, and also that buffer space and a pathway, we're starting to kind of get out there, and you know, we have homes. Can folks still hear us on the call? Can someone?
No, they won't be able to hear from the owl. You have to turn yours.
We can hear you now.
Kick back
Hold
in,
on.
yes.
Okay, you can hear us.
Not for
So
the
our big
last 90
camera went out,
seconds,
but we
yes,
still have
now.
the little one.
There you go. Now you can see me at least. All right, Austin's gonna speak a little bit about that next step of the public process before we wrap.
Sure, and before I mention specifics, these are just when we're targeting outreach. We were always happy to take comments, feedback, suggestion at any point in this process. Never feel like you cannot reach out to any of us, provide comments, ask questions, you know, at any point. You'll see the first bullet talks about our online interaction. So that's constantly updated with these recordings of these meetings, online surveys, materials, presentations, the slideshows, all of that stuff, resources for you to check out online. We update that after the meetings. Let's see, the number 2 is the point of this group, right? The meetings we're having today with you all. We're at number 3. We'll have 2 more meetings early next year and then 1 later in the spring. And then to the point about the workshops that we've had already, we already had 1. We've got another one scheduled for December 3rd, so a little under a month from now, and that'll be another drop-in time for the public to come in and just see what we've been talking about so far. You all as tag members, you know, we really want you all to be the ones to advocate for this project to your community, to your residents, to whatever organization you're here representing. That's kind of why we have this group together, is for you all to be that voice to folks out in the public. And bring in, community members. And then we'll do another workshop later in the spring. And then you'll see number 4, that targeted outreach, like we were just talking about. We want people that are directly along the corridor to make sure that we get their impact, we get their feedback, their response to what we're doing. And again, all this, outreach at any point during this process, we wanted to come into us. Just because that number 4, you see that at the bottom, doesn't mean it can't happen now or next week or couldn't have happened months ago, right? So that's kind of the focus on that public involvement. Does anybody have any comments on any of this? Particularly want to see something different, want to see us do anything specifically?
For every 10 people you bring to a workshop, you get entered in a raffle to win a Del traffic cone. I just made that up. It's not actually true, but we do really want you to try to actively recruit people to come because we need people to come to that workshop. We want to see you all there, but we want to see other people as well.
So just a comment that it might, one thing you might consider doing.
We discussed a lot already.
So we put that discussion slide up there with the thought that if somehow, and we didn't expect this crew was just stone silent for the entire meeting, that we would then have a discussion at the end, but we kind of had our discussion as we were going through, but I certainly want to open it up if there was something you wanted to share that you just didn't feel like you got the opportunity to do. If there's anything we want to share at this point, please, this is a great time to bring it up.
I will make one comment, and I'm not being facetious or anything like that. This is all being said and done under an ideal environment. Every driver drives the same way. Every driver listens and obeys all the speed limits. That none of that exists because in Delaware, people drive the way they want to drive, no matter what the sign is.
We actually like to assume that when we're designing these streets.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's not in Delaware.
Design with that in mind.
Yeah.
And part of the problem, I think, with the old way of designing streets that we've all grew up driving, the variable, I think you were holding it, is the phone, right? The distraction, and I think a little bit less of a shorter fuse, right? So we like, it's like
there's a certain amount of aggression.
Yep.
Well, we're, this group, the people you're looking at here, some of the other support, we're not naive. We don't do this and not understand the reality of a lot of what we have to deal with. But what we also know is that most of the really effective good things that have happened in that mix of transportation and land use that small or bigger municipalities have ever accomplished takes a group like this to come together and come up with a plan. I mean, you look at what's happening in some big cities where you think, how could they ever get things done? And suddenly they're closing streets and it's just pedestrians now. And you got bike lanes, obviously things take money, but you need a plan first. You need something.
My house faces Route 5, and I can sit on my porch and watch every bit of traffic goes up and down Route 5. On a normal day, it's a raceway. People drive very fast. put one of the Jeep's cars out there on the other hand. And all of a sudden, everybody's driving really slow.
All right, so, you know, we talked about that if you leave this meeting or anyone online, if you still can hear me. If you get some great idea or if there's a thought that pops in your head, feel free to share an email to Austin or Leah. The information's on there. Are we sharing this PowerPoint with the group? Are we sending this out to them afterwards, Leah?
Yes, so the slides will go out to you all. I'm hoping when the Zoom stopped, we didn't lose the whole recording. Assuming we didn't, there will also be a video posted of all of this. So again, that's part of the deal on the website, and we'll shoot you a link. And again, that's something you can share with your neighbors as well.
So we'll be getting you out reminders for the public meeting on December 3rd.
Yeah, we have a flyer.
Future tag meetings and so forth. And you want to wrap this up, Austin?
Contact information on the screen for anybody that doesn't have it already. And again, if you have any questions in the meantime or comments, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you all.
That's all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.